Hi, everyone. This is Phil Blancato, and I'm CEO and President of Latimer Thalman Asset Management, Chief Market Strategist for Osaic. Welcome to another weekly market impact. Here we go again, October the 6th. You know what's cool this time of year? I did one of my walks last night. It was a beautiful night here in New Jersey. I was just chilling out after a kind of a busy weekend running around. Georgia Bulldogs won, very cool. Kentucky, for the folks at Kentucky, sorry. I mean, they don't have the team this year to compete. We'll see if the Dogs are any good in a couple of weeks here. Auburn's a very good team, and game after game after game after this is going to get interesting. So we'll see about the Georgia Bulldogs. But ultimately, this time of year, I got a lot going on. There's plenty to do here. Fixing my camera, sorry. And the reason why is I've been traveling a bunch. I've been all over the country. You've seen some of my videos. Last week's recording wasn't great. This week I'm home, so slightly better recording, and hopefully you'll be able to sound a little bit better. That's better color too. So anyway, I've noticed, it's just kind of a weird fall for us. It's been really warm. And what you get is everybody's Halloween crazy. So you walk around, and some of the houses by my house are just unbelievable what they do. Halloween spending could be as much as $15 billion this year. And you see it. I would bet you drive around your neighborhood and you're going to see incredible things people put in their lawn, where there's gigantic skeleton dogs. I saw one that had these five pumpkins. They're all about 2 feet high, maybe a foot wide. And each pumpkin has a different sort of look on its face, angry, scary face, and they light up at night in these really vibrant orange and purple colors. Incredible how good they look. And then the miniature skeletons and the noise. I have a neighbor with three witches on their lawn and a big cauldron in front bubbling over. Incredible. I love it. I think Halloween's the coolest holiday because it's non-religious. So for the folks who are not religious or a different religion, than Christianity, because of Christmas, that makes it easy. Thanksgiving is I think, a universally celebrated holiday for all of us. Some days I'm not so sure when I watch the news on the weekend. But certainly, Thanksgiving is just the coolest of all the holidays. And this year, Halloween is the coolest of all the holidays. And what's fun about it is everybody gets into it. Everybody kind of accepts it, that it's a fun holiday. If I'm not mistaken, checking my calendar real quick. Yeah, it's a Friday this year. Oh, the parties are raging. When I was a younger kid, we used to throw an annual Halloween party, me and my buddies, and we'd get a lot of people. We'd get hundreds, 300 people. It was a big undertaking, but it was fun. Everyone got dressed up. We had contests. It was quite a good time. We always enjoyed ourselves. Sports weekend. My beloved New York Yankees are just getting walloped by the Toronto Blue Jays. Kudos to Toronto. That team is awesome. Those guys just hit and hit and hit. Very impressive. They're one heck of a team. So good for them. And we got a chance. We play again tomorrow, but I think it's a long shot. They're just a much better team. And the New York football, forget about it. We want to talk about that. Terrible. Oh my gosh, that's not even worth it. I'm discussing the Giants and the Jets. Anyway, enough sports update. I'll be down in Georgia in a couple of weeks here for the Ole Miss game with my good friend Pierre Adams. That'll be a good time just to see how they do. Got to get through Auburn first. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. The girls got to paint the G in Georgia. There's the big G in the middle of the field, and they have this event where they allow certain kids to come on the field and paint it before the game. So they got a chance to go out there and do that, and they had a great time. They went to the Kentucky game and enjoyed themselves. Marcella called me up on Thursday and was distraught. She had an OChem exam, organic chemistry exam, and she said she actually, for the first time in her college career, left a few items blank, completely distressed that she did terrible. And I try to explain to the kid that that's life. Sometimes things just don't go your way. But unfortunately for Marcella, she does not accept bad performance. Whereas Luca just has things all figured out. Things come easy for Luca. Marcella works really hard. And I felt bad for her. She had a bit of a tough go there. Anyway, I hope your weekend was fun. Hopefully you did something good. And if you're enjoying the weather like we have, my gosh, this is kind of crazy stuff here, as warm as it's been. Markets. Well, we are in the middle of a government shutdown, and shutdowns in and of themselves sound really scary. But the meat and potatoes of it, there is about 700,000 plus federal employees that are furloughed. They don't get their first paycheck until the 15th. So the paycheck they're supposed to get, they got, and they won't get their second paycheck until the 15th. So they're not hurting as families go until the 15th of October. So we got a little time here. Shutdowns happen, 14 of them over the last 30 years. And then going one further, when you think about what they mean. Generally, the U.S. government only has 2% of GDP. So, in other words, government to business transactions only represent 2% of gross domestic product. It does cost the government money when we have services that aren't on those. So, if there's people filing for whether it's applications with the federal government, lines at TSA might be a little bit longer, and so on. There's certain agencies that could slow down here, costing the economy some money. Not in the trillion, not in the hundreds of billions, but in the billions of dollars. Nothing too significant. In other words, a shutdown doesn't mean much for the economy really at all because 98% is business to business, business to consumer. But a prolonged shutdown, one that would last the last 2 and 3 months, would. That would end up creating a real problem. And it really comes down to Obamacare, the original Health Care Act. Is it properly funded? And the Republican Party no longer wants to fund it because basically they're using Medicaid and Medicare as the backstop for it. It's simply a tax. At the end of the day, that program was a tax on folks to be able to pay for this. The federal government's having to spend more than they expected. And the reality is, healthcare in the United States, to not get overly complicated, is challenging. We never have quite figured it out. Not that the rest of the world has either, by the way. I have family in the middle that like to rave about how they get free healthcare when the reality is they pay a significant stipend every month out of their paycheck for their healthcare and have to wait for longer term surgery. So there's no perfect system from what I can tell. But certainly the fight at its core is going to be about Obamacare, which means this could last a little bit longer than anyone expected. Let's see. Point is, for today, not a big deal. If it continues, it could become one. For the week, the market did quite well. The S&P 500 up 15% on the year, much higher than I expected. And in fact, if we get a strong earnings season here, which begins in earnest next week, not this week, then in fact we could see a scenario where the markets push even higher. A 20% S&P 500 would be very surprising to me. But in fact, there's been calls for S&P at 7,000. I don't love that it's still so AI driven. There's still, just this morning, another wonderful announcement about OpenAI and AMD partnering up for data centers and chips, driving the AI trade even higher. There's been a lot of talk about AI slop, how students are using it to cheat, and the teachers are obviously picking it up. How companies are using it and then having to look at the output of the AI bot and clean it up because it's not really well done. We're still in our infancy in AI, and I agree that the spending makes sense and from a productivity standpoint could be incredibly powerful. Oh my gosh, the amount of money that's being spent here is beginning to become a real concern to me. That if we get into an AI bubble scenario where companies start to slow down their spending on it, the market will greatly struggle. We are not there yet. And this morning we're going to push higher on the S&P 500. We're probably over 16% as of today. But be careful, everybody. Diversify. There's been a huge move in the corporate bonds, trillions of dollars going into American corporate bonds. Why? Because they're paying a wonderful yield of 4 to 5%. And if interest rates go down, prices go higher. The bond market is up over 6.39 on the year. That's an amazing number. The U.S. aggregate bond number up 6.39. Probably, like I keep talking about, getting as much as 8% out of your bond portfolio this year. That's a wonderful number. It really puts you in a place where balanced accounts should produce 11, 12, 13% on the year. That's an incredible number if we get there. And the reason why is there's a slowing down of interest rates. Now, I don't think interest rates fall much further. There's lots of expectations the Federal Reserve might cut later this month. But remember, on this past Friday, because the government was shut down, the latest round of jobs data didn't come out. We don't know how jobs did for the month of September. We saw ADP jobs come in contraction, meaning the number of private sector jobs added for the month of September was less than 30,000. So negative 30,000. We saw a reduction in jobs added to the private sector. Now, I don't love ADP's numbers. They've changed the way they calculate for a long time now. I'd like to say that they're relevant, not statistically important. But my point is, we have a scenario where we're not getting data from the federal government. And go one further, everyone's expecting a rate cut. We didn't get it. I don't think I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. I'm not sure that we're going to get it because inflation's still stubbornly high. We're still stuck around 3%. So I don't think the Federal Reserve is in any rush to cut rates here in October. They may, but let's see how this plays out because of lack of government data would be a concern for the Federal Reserve. And then if they don't cut rates, what is the market going to do with that? So I think we got to be very careful about expecting this AI trade to just keep pushing higher and higher when things could get in the way. We had a wonderful September. September is usually a very difficult month. It was not. But we're looking at the S&P 500 trading 23 times earnings. It means for every dollar a company earns, it's 23 times greater. That's a lot. No, the average is 18, really 16. So we're not inexpensive when it comes to the markets in general. So I think we just got to think about being prudent here, owning some bonds, being diversified. For example, small cap stocks, well, they were the winner on the week, up 1.78%. That's a wonderful year. They're up 12% on the year. They may just catch the S&P 500 if this continues. International stocks continue to do well. They were the winner. EFA up 2.73% on the week. That's a combination of the dollar staying relatively weak. When I look at the dollar for the week, it's still struggling to break out of this range that we're in, and the expectation that the Fed's going to cut rates. That number is higher than anyone really thought. International up 27% on the year. Wow, what a trade. We don't own a lot of international, but it's been a heck of a place to be because of the inexpensive component of it. Emerging markets also up 3.68. I'm sorry, they were the winner in the week. They were the winner. That was some of the reduced regulations coming out of China, and that willing to allow more commerce and supposedly some additional trade negotiations. Up 31% on the year for emerging markets. Really a very impressive year, and the other international markets that have done quite well. Hard to disagree with how well some of these names have done. When I think about markets in general right now, we're at a bit of a holding pattern. And by that, I mean, what we see right now is there isn't a lot of clear guidance as to where we're going to go next. Now, we're going to wait for earnings season. The AI boom is helping markets drive higher. But I do think we're in a scenario where, let's not think that things go up straight forever. I'm not trying to be bearish. I'm just trying to say a little prudence goes a long way right here. The AMD announcement this morning with OpenAI is interesting. Mergers do help markets go higher, no doubt about it. And I did see the number of jobs opening for the week go to 7.22 million, meaning there's still people out there, still jobs available for people who are looking for them. It's about even. The number of open jobs and people looking is about even. However, remember I talk a lot about ISM stuff. We measure the growth of manufacturing. That's called ISM manufacturing. That's been in contraction pretty much for just about every single month for the last 2 years. Now it ticked up to 49.1. Anything above 50 is expansion. Anything below 50 is contraction. So at 49.1, I think we're in a scenario where it's, hard to say exactly whether or not manufacturing could ever get off the mat. But I did read a fascinating piece about Sharpies this morning. Now, we all love our Sharpies. I'm sure you love Sharpies as much as I do. Sharpies are just, come on, who doesn't love that really bright, vibrant color you get from a Sharpie and all those things in it that make it, really kind of fun and exciting to look at when you want to make something permanent. Well, do you know where Sharpies are made? A couple of years back, with some incentives, Sharpies are now made in Maryville, Tennessee. They were once made in China and to some degree Japan, and the problem is a lot of them dried out on their way here, and the quality wasn't quite there. So the CEO of the company decided to move Sharpie production back to the United States, Chris Peterson. And what happened is they now have 550 staff members, and what they're watching is the number of home U.S. born staff members is increasing. Their productivity is better. They've brought in robots and particular machinery to help them make the Sharpie quicker and faster in the United States. And guess what? They could actually make a better Sharpie, 98 different colors in the United States. The factory ships around 1.8 million fine tip Sharpies a day. So this idea that U.S. manufacturing can't come back, not really true. Whether it's footballs made in the United States, the football in the NFL is made in the U.S. from start to finish in another small factory in the United States, or in this case, Sharpies. And I think it's really quite impressive that to bring back U.S. manufacturing, you need incentives. Now, you don't always get the resources that you need, but certainly from the idea of tax breaks, the ability to deduct the entire cost of building a facility from day one, I think that's very important. And when you start to think about the number of folks out there looking for jobs, you could see, the opportunity to maybe just start to bring some manufacturing back. There's commitments from lots of companies, the latest one being Pfizer, that sure enough, there may just be an opportunity to bring more manufacturing back, especially in the medical sector. just something to think about. I think it's very, very important that as we get there, we want to make sure we're not thinking that we can't ever make stuff again. I don't think we'll ever make stuff to the degree we once did, but bringing back aluminum, steel to a lesser degree, lithium, Sharpies. Will we ever make shoes in the United States? You never know. I would be surprised if we could make shoes again in the United States. But could we, in fact, be able to bring back really important aspects of it? I think there's something to be said there for the fact that there could, in fact, be more manufacturing than folks let on to. Now, the other one is ISM services, and that's a really important one. Why is ISM services so important? Because ISM services is the service sector representation of the United States. And why I care about that is 70% of the US economy is based on services. And when the service sector is growing, it means we're growing. Now, we saw the latest round of GDP data come in quite strong. GDP for the United States coming in around 3.8%. Now, there's still this trade issue in the middle of all this. We got to be careful here that some of it's kind of just goofy, that it's not really going to have an impact as to whether or not this is real GDP data or not. Let's just see. Well, I'm not convinced that that's the case just yet. But I do think seeing ISM services come in at a relatively strong number is important. And why that matters, I think you have to be honest. When you think about where we're ultimately going to be as a country, we're never going to get away from being a service nation. Now, as I mentioned, I'd like to see some manufacturing come back. That would be wonderful. But at the same token, do you think we could have a scenario where we wouldn't grow on services? Well, services are important because services have to grow. And the reason why they have to grow is because the boomers who have 70% of the assets in the United States want services and they're going to spend on services. And I think that's terribly important. That when you think about where we are from a service standpoint, if we're spending on services and we see this continued growth of services, meaning folks aren't slowing down a whole heck of a lot, well, then you have a scenario where the United States will be just fine. Got to get your debt under control. We still have to get our debt under control. And that's what this whole house fight is so much about. I think that really matters that we have this house fight and whether or not the government shuts down for a prolonged period of time or not is important. We have to get our debt under control. And whether it's making some money off of tariffs, whether it's growing the country, whether it's a bit of both, whether it's spending a little bit less, I think all of that really does matter in the long term. But if you can get your spending under control, and at the same token, you have this opportunity to, potentially grow your service sector, but also your manufacturing sector. Well, then guess what? Maybe just maybe you end up in a scenario where you might have a U.S. that does quite well for a very long period of time. Meaning we have the opportunity. We're in the middle of this experiment, and whether that the experiment works out or not, we'll have to see. But we're in the middle of this experiment that, for me, it could go one of two ways. We either grow the size of our country and level and maintain our debt because we reduce spending and tariff revenue, and then suddenly our debt to GDP ratio goes back below one, meaning we make more than what we owe, or it doesn't work. We balloon our deficits higher because of lower taxes, and we just don't get the growth of U.S. GDP. That's what's going to happen. And it affects markets because at the end of the day, we continue to need greater earnings growth to justify how expensive the market has gotten. And if we don't get greater earnings growth, it's just not going to happen. So, we have to be mindful that the market needs two things: earnings growth to support stocks and modest inflation to support bonds. And right now, we've got modest inflation. Ideally, it'd be going a bit lower, but it is a bit lower. And we have good earnings growth. So right now, we're okay. I'm concerned about as the prices keep pushing higher, will we get the earnings growth to justify it? And to do that, you want to get rid of government shutdowns. You want to control your spending, and you want the economy to grow at around 3.5%. It all ties together. Makes sense? I'm getting a little too bit in the weeds. All right. So just for fun, a couple of things I saw over the weekend, which I thought were worth noting. That one, do you know that you're not going to believe this. I can't help myself. Did you know that the tomato is the reason why we have potatoes? Now, I know you're not going to believe this. I know you're going to tell me that I'm crazy. I know you're going to tell me that that's just nuts. But I read a fascinating research report over the weekend that talked about potatoes and tomatoes, and this goes back millions of years ago, crossbred with each other. And the reason why we have potatoes today, which is about 25% of the starch in the American diet, is from a crossbreeding of a tomato and a potato. How about that? The exact name of the tomato escapes me. I have it here if I can find it. Forgive me. The It descends from the tuberous Etosporium plant. I'm sure I got that wrong. But anyway, decades, millions of years ago, the potato and the tomato crossbred to make something new and exciting. And our potatoes today. How about that? I don't know about you. I did plant tomatoes in my garden, and I did plant potatoes in my garden. So maybe I'm the one that's going to create the newest, greatest tomato potato split. But you can't say that 10 times fast. Um, I did read one other piece I want to mention that the investment in AI is quite powerful. And when you look at the amount of money that's being spent today on the current cycle of investments in AI, it's actually more so on an inflation adjusted basis than, are you ready for this? All we spent on the internet revolution. And it took a long time for the internet revolution to take hold. So that's quite amazing that it took a long time for the internet revolution to become a real thing. Something to think about. How long was it before we spent all that money on fiber optic lines before they became necessary and relevant to the U.S. economy? All right. So a quick week this week. My shout out of the week is a personal one. And he'll probably never hear this, but I have to do it. I do too many personal ones. Maybe I should do less of that. Let me know. Let me know if my personal shout outs are not the best. My personal shout out is to my Zio Augusto Russo. Zio Augusto Russo is my Uncle Augusto. Zio in Italian means uncle. If you really want to be my friend, just call me Zio. That's my nickname for people I care a lot about. But anyway, Zio Augusto is 90 years old, soon to be 91. Unfortunately, he's not doing great. He's finally slowing down a bit. He's had some issues with a UTI that led to him being a bit disoriented, and probably for Zio, unfortunately, hopefully they can get him better, but he's probably slowing down a ton. Well, yesterday I got a chance to go spend time with him. I spent a couple hours with him yesterday afternoon, and we were out there in the sunshine in Westfield, New Jersey, just catching up. And luckily for me, he was still sharp enough that we could have a conversation. And he told me how much he loved me and how much I love him. He's my godfather and my uncle, my mother's brother. He's one of the last of the great Italians that are in my life, and that's why he's my shout out of the week. These great immigrants that came here with not a penny in their pocket, with no education, and they simply worked until they dropped. He was a great example of that. He still to this day speaks very little English. The man dug. I mean, you gave him a shovel and he dug, and he dug, and he dug, and he dug. He dug out water lines. He dug out trenches. He dug anytime my dad told him where to dug, he dug. He worked very closely with my father. And to his credit, he never tired. The guy was a great father to his son, my cousin Phil. He has wonderful grandkids and a couple great grandkids. He's the epitome of the American dream. Today, I believe he owns 3, 4, two-family homes. He's worth plenty of money. He's succeeded in every right. A great father, a great person, a great family man, the kind of person we all hope to be someday. And while he's slowing down, and I hope he's with us for a long time to come, that's probably not the case. So my hat's off to Zio Augusto, a true, powerful Italian immigrant, like any immigrant. They have gigantic shoulders that we all stand on. And that's why I'm such a pro-immigrant person. I just think that they're one of the cores of capitalism, and I come from some amazing people. And Zio is one of them. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Take care. I'll talk to you all soon.